Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm Dr. Kali Namdar, OHEL School-Based Services and Resilience Programs Director. Thanks so much for being here. Tonight's webinar is going to move very quickly. We've called it lightning rounds because we want to capture the best tools that our incredible team of educators have for you here tonight to support yourself and support your students in this busy back-to-school season. I'll never forget attending my own daughter's back-to-school night, and her teacher opened with, "Welcome to my classroom, the School of Life." Schools are where the magic really happens, where students and teachers connect with each other and with colleagues and parents, and above all, are really hubs of belonging. And I want to start by acknowledging each and every one of you that are here tonight that make that magic happen. Thank you for your dedication, for your passion, and your unwavering commitment to education. The start of a new school year always brings a mix of emotion. There's anticipation, there's excitement, and there are some nerves too. But it's also a really great time to begin again, a time of new opportunities and the chance to really make a lasting impact on students' lives. This past year has taught us so much about flexibility, about innovation, and the power of community. We're navigating a terrible war in Israel, and your resilience as educators has really been nothing short of inspiring and remarkable. And as we move forward, we have the unique opportunity to take everything that we've learned and build on it and create even more meaningful and engaging learning experiences for our students. Tonight's webinar is going to be as practical as possible. We're going to really learn about some great tools to kick off this school year stronger than before. We have an amazing lineup of educators that will provide you with fresh insights and practical approaches to really enrich your teaching experience. I want to thank the generous support of UJA Federation of New York, who makes OHEL's Teacher Support Helpline possible. OHEL's Teacher Support Helpline is an incredible resource that offers support to educators, to youth support professionals, and all people who interact with students in our Jewish schools. And the helpline can be reached at 718-686-3230 and is open Monday through Wednesday, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Wednesday through Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're really thankful for our partners in tonight's webinar, for the Chabad Menachem Education Foundation, for Prisma, and for SBH Sephardic Bikor Cholim. But before we dive into our learning together, I want to remind you that tonight is also all about connection. We want to hear from you. If you have a question or you have something that would like to be asked of a presenter, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll do our best to get all your questions answered. So the way this webinar is going to work, each of our presenters is going to share their top tools to start this school year strong. And then we're going to go into our Q&A. And let me just share a little bit with you about our incredible lineup of presenters. Brett Kugler. Brett currently works at the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School in Rockville, Maryland, where he holds the positions of 10th grade dean, high school learning specialist, basketball coach, and runs the middle and high school Mechitza Ashkenazi Minyan. Over the past 20 years, Brett has served as a middle school dean of students, middle school director of educational support services, director of experiential Jewish education, and a middle school and high school Zman Kodesh coordinator. Brett is a passionate educator that believes in the importance of building connections and helping students to feel seen, heard, and empowered to become the best versions of themselves. He holds a BA in studio art from the University of Maryland and an MS in special education from Johns Hopkins University. And he can be reached at bkugler, B-K-U-G-L-E-R, at cesjds.org. Mushki Lipsker will go after Brett. She has a master's in education and 15 years of experience in the classroom and in leadership roles. She's the founder of Ever-Growing Educator, a platform to encourage teachers to develop and sharpen their growth mindset. Mushki loves all things education, but she especially loves giving teachers practical tools to empower them in a creative, innovative, and an engaged classroom. She mentors teachers and presents professional development in a range of school settings, and you can find her practical tools on her Instagram handle at Evergrowing Educator, and she can be reached at evergrowingeducator@gmail.com. Yonina Lermer is a licensed New York State teacher with a master's in elementary education and a master's in Judaic studies. With over 16 years of experience in education, she has taught almost every grade level and subject in elementary and middle school. She's the founder of Kid Coach, KIDKOACH, and she coaches and mentors teachers and parents to become healthy advocates for kids and learn strategies and skills to help them succeed. She's also the proud author of the children's book, A Kid's Book About Perseverance, which you'll hear more about. And she teaches children the value of continued effort towards the things they love, even when things get hard. To see what else she's up to, you can check her out on her Instagram handle, where you can also contact her at Kid Coach. And we're going to dive in. Brett, we're going to start with you. Let's go.
Thank you so much, Dr. Namdar, and thank you to OHealth for having me tonight. I'm going to dive right in on this lightning round, and I'm going to share with you guys the tools to start the year off strong that I feel, to me, are most impactful. The first one I'm actually going to spend the most time on because I believe it's the most crucial at the beginning of the year, which is rapport building. What happens outside of the classroom is just as important as what happens inside of the classroom. And so there are two features to building that rapport that I want to focus on. The first is about the actual amount of time that you spend when you're building that rapport and how often you do it. And the second is the verbal and nonverbal rapport building. Both pieces are really important. And I'm going to share a little bit of a story for each one that I think expresses how those things are best given over. Last year, towards the end of the school year, I had a student come to my minyan, my prayer space, and he came with a friend, and he said to me, Mr. Kugler, I know I'm not normally in here, but my grandfather's not well right now, and I would love to have the opportunity to come into your space since I'm not usually in a prayer space. And I said, you're more than welcome to come in. Please tell me, what is your grandfather's name? I want to make sure that I daven, that I'm praying for him. And he said, at this point, we're just praying for him for making it through the night and coming out healthy. Like, don't worry about his name. And I said, no, you're a student of mine. It's important to you. That means it's important to me. What's his name? I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I'm davening, not only for him to get better, for you to have a chance to speak with him, for you to have a chance to come to peace with, for it to be a smooth process, and for him to, in whatever way, have the experience that's better. And he said, okay, and he gave me the name. The next day, I saw the student comes into my minyan, my prayer space, and he says, I couldn't stay in today. I have to go back to where I need to be, but I wanted to lay tefillin. I wanted to wrap my prayer garments before I go to that space. It was a really beautiful thing to hear him say he was still okay, he was still hanging in there. But when I'm talking about time and building rapport, what was really important was 3 weeks later. He wasn't in my prayer space every day. He wasn't coming into davening. Instead, we were on a trip, and I saw him, and I made a point of going over and saying to him, hey, I've been thinking about you for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I just wanted to check in. His response was, first, you see it in his face, and you'll see this with any student. They know when you care. And so he said, thank you so much for asking. My grandfather actually made a miraculous recovery. He's out of the hospital. He's off of all the feeding tubes, and everything is getting so much better. Just to take you to modern day today was my first day of school back. And that student came over to me and he's like, my grandfather's doing amazing. And I just wanted to let you know, I'm switching into your minyan. I'm coming to your prayer space. And I truly believe that the difference is building that rapport and making sure that you check in. We all say, how are you? Move on, and don't think twice about the answer. We expect the answer is yes, everything's great. In this case, the 3 weeks that built really let him know that I cared. And so that overtime piece is incredibly important. And the second thing that I'm going to share regarding building rapport is verbal and nonverbal opportunities. We all have kids in our class that are talkers. They love to participate and they love to share. We also have kids who may not feel as comfortable talking. In my classroom, I don't know how many of you are familiar with March Madness. It's a basketball tournament for college basketball with a big bracket. I use that exact same thing to do what I call March Dadness. I love dad jokes. It's a flaw in me. I embrace it. And what I do is I put up in my classroom every day on the board 2 dad jokes and a big bracket, and they see that bracket, and I have students who are coming to my class excited to be there, not because the jokes are funny, and I don't know whether they're voting, whether it's the best joke or the most cringy, but I know that I have kids coming and they're smiling. And the point that I was making in there was that for kids who want to talk and share, they're going to talk and share in your class. But I'm giving an outlet to students that don't necessarily want to participate as much. It doesn't mean they're nonverbal. It just may mean they don't want to speak as much. But they come in and they have a way of participating in my class in a low stakes, fun opportunity. If you can do that at the beginning of your school year and build that rapport, it's night and day different, the responses you'll get. So please make sure, first one, build rapport, think about checking back in and following up with students, even if they don't want to talk about it. It's okay to say, I just wanted to let you know I've been thinking of you. I know you were going through something. It means the world. My second point, following curriculum does not have to be at the expense of creativity. I love being creative. I love doing things in my lesson plan. It really makes a tremendous difference. And it may take a little bit of time on the back end to get those thoughts out and plan out what you're doing, but the creativity shows and the kids pick up on that. I also want to emphasize, and this is crucial when building your curriculum, always give a statement of functionality. We had orientation on Monday. I asked the students in high school, why are you taking math? Most of them didn't really have an answer. They're like, because we have to. Some, I want to be a math teacher, I want to be an accountant, but most because I have to. When I explain to them that there is a purpose and that if you've ever had an argument with somebody, or if you've ever had to get up and go downstairs, there's problem solving that takes place. That argument that you have with a friend, you're problem solving. Walking downstairs, I get out of bed, I brush my teeth, I get dressed, I come downstairs. Where are my shoes? Where was the last room I was in? Problem solving. All of a sudden, when they get to math class and they realize, okay, I may not be a math teacher, I may not be an accountant when I get out of here, but I'm always going to use problem solving. You've elected to teach them that there's a purpose to what they're doing, and the buy-in is much bigger. And in terms of the creativity, I'm going to give you an example from my basketball coaching. What I do with my coaching, and please don't share this with my opponents, but I always create all of my plays based off of what they're doing in their Tanakh class, in their Bible or Torah class, because I want to build the synapses. I want to connect the dots so that they know that when they hear these plays, they already have prior information that they're building off of. So for example, we play what's called a 2-3 zone. Everybody covers a certain spot. I call the play Esav. Esau was a hunter in the Bible, and he trapped animals. So it's our trap defense. And when they hear that, they think about their Bible class, they think about their basketball play, and they know what I'm asking them to do. Or the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom, when the entire infrastructure of the city is wiped out. That is our full court press, where we're wiping out everything they're doing. So I'm using creativity in what I'm doing to try to help them understand what it is that I'm trying to get across with a statement of functionality. This is going to teach you how to utilize those skills, and you can use it in multiple places. My third point is executive functioning. We've all heard the term, we've all used the term, we all use executive functioning skills in varying degrees and levels. It is just as important teaching our kids these skills as it is to utilize them ourselves. So I really want to make clear that if you go into your lesson planning, whether it's at the beginning of the week, the beginning of the month, the night before, being purposeful about what you're doing is incredibly important to setting them up for success. They are aware when there is structure, and they are aware when there's chaos. They may not be in your home when you're creating the plan or in your teacher's room, but they get that feeling that this seems all over the place. I'm running here, I forgot this supply. Make sure you take the time, again, on the back end to create that plan. Keep your calendars. And for me, I always tell my students, think about what type of learner you are. Do you sit down on the 27th or 28th of every month and create a month at a glance? Do you sit down every Sunday night and make sure that you know this is what I have for this week? Do you sit down the night before and say, what do I have coming up tomorrow? If you can look at those things, and you may do all three, you may do one or two, it's up to you to figure out what works. But that important piece is knowing that executive functioning is equally important for you as the kids. And you have to decide which things are finite and I need to get through, and which things can be shifted based off of what's going on in your classroom. My next point is prioritizing mental health for yourself. I cannot stress this enough. We as teachers are giving, kind, and caring people. We do everything we can to try to make sure that we give to our students, to our families, to our friends. But it is important, just like they say on an airplane, make sure you put the mask on yourself first so that you can help others. That same principle ties directly into what you do. Recently, I read an article on NPR about a woman who was recently widowed. And what they did was, she said the first month after this tragedy, everybody reached out and everybody cared and everybody did whatever they could to be there for her. And she said, what was really special though, was those same friends said, we may not be able to call every day, but if each one of us takes a day and we plot it out, we can check in and continue that. And so that prioritizing mental health, it's important for you to plot ahead. It's important for you to think about those things. So for me, I love to pick 10 activities that I want to do. It's once a month. It doesn't have to be expensive, but doing those things. And for me, I'm going to a baseball game in 2 weeks. I'm building time in and I'm going to do it. I'm going to a comedy show in a month. I make sure that I have those things. And we always say like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do in a month. I don't know what I'm going to do in 4 months. If you put it on your calendar, then you know what you're going to do, right? If something comes up, you'll figure that out. But usually it's workaroundable if you have something on your calendar that you have to look forward to, and it changes your mental health prospects, okay? The hippocampus is in charge of memory in your brain. Find a small spot right next to it, call it the happy campus. Build your happy memories in that space with the things that you're going to do. It's not just for you, it's for your students also. They're going to have a happier teacher, they're going to have a more productive teacher, and there's nothing more beautiful than that. I'm going to leave you with one final thought, and then I'm going to pass you on to these other excellent educators. Body language and tone. They know when you're being sincere, they can tell when you're fake, they can tell when you're tired, they can tell you that you're frustrated. What I love to tell students, and I'm going to ask you, I don't need to see screens, I don't need to know that you're all doing this, but if I asked you right now, stop what you're doing and drop your shoulders. Lower your shoulders. Actually do this right now. Lower your shoulders. The fact that almost all of you were able to do that means that you understand that you're operating at a place where you have a stress level. And when this is here, instead of here, it's going to come out. So please, before you walk into your classroom, think about your body language, think about your tone of voice, and understand that they can see that sincerity. It's going to make you feel better knowing that you're mindful, and it's going to make them feel better knowing that your responsiveness to them and proactivity with them are totally in line with where they should be. Thank you so much, and I'm going to pass you on to our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Brett. That was really, really practical and wonderful. Now we are going to hear from Mushki Lipsker. Take it away.
Okay, I'm gonna share screen. And first of all, that was great. You know, I don't even like sports, but I want to come watch one of your games just for the way you described it. Okay, so we're gonna go with some, we're gonna fill our teacher toolbox today with some tools for the new year. So the first one, bouncing off of what Brett said, it's really important in the beginning of the year to get to know each other. But get to know each other really is not just about us getting to know the students, but it's actually three things. It's really us getting to know the students getting to know us, and also the students getting to know each other. So taking time in the beginning of the year to first tell the students about ourselves. You know, that makes the students feel welcome and feel like they're in a safe space, and telling them about ourselves, about our families, about our interests, that makes them comfortable for them to share with us what they want to tell us. You know, then I like to give out a form that the students fill out for us to get to know the students, an individual form for each student to fill out. I have some questions over here. Feel free to screenshot, or you could check out the recording that you'll get later. But asking them some questions, some related to academic, but mostly not. What do they like to do outside of school? What's something that they want to learn more about? How do they best learn? Do they like working in groups or alone? Why? What they're excited for? Some, guided questions, some open-ended questions, but really to get to know the students. And what's really important is to set a reminder, however you do it. For me, it's Google Calendar. For you, it's a planner, to set a reminder to look at these forms. Because if the forms just stay on the teacher's desk, right, until it's time to clean at the end of the year or clean for Pesach, they're useless. So to really set, on the first of every month, to take some time and look through the forms. And not only to look at the forms, but also to implement what they wrote on the forms, right? To take their interest and bring it into the classroom. I like to ask my students their favorite song. The reason I do that is I actually create a playlist of my students' favorite songs, so that whenever I would have played music in the classroom, sometimes for group work or for when they're coming in, instead of it being my favorite songs, or instead of it being, a co-teacher's playlist that you just shared on a WhatsApp group, instead it's my students' favorite songs. So if you go on Spotify, you could search 6th grade faves and you'll see my students' favorite songs. Those are their favorite songs. When my students really liked word games one year, I created this Boggle game where when we were learning about Rambam, we were learning about Maimonides, there's words related to him, Spain and doctors. But again, I did it based on the students' interest. The students were really into word games that year. We tried to bring them in more. When I was teaching a 5th grade class and they were very into emojis, we brought emojis a lot that year. Even just adding emojis to the rubric made it that when they got that rubric, there was that moment of connection. My teacher knows that I'm into, that I like emojis, that I appreciate emojis. And so taking their answers and really seeing how do we take their answers and implement it into the classroom, not just leave it, a paper that we get to know them and it stays on paper, but really to bring it into the classroom. Okay, the second one, here's a little interactive activity, which even though you're not, I know I can't see you on Zoom, you can each do this, whether you're in your kitchen or wherever you are. We're going to replace, there's a common phrase that we say in the classroom that this tip is going to really help for student engagement. So this is called a word ladder. It's a word game for those of you who like word games. And here's how it goes. There's 4 rungs on the ladder, and you want to see if you can get from the word hand to the word task with switching one letter per rung of the ladder. So hand can switch to band or can switch to sand or band, right? So I'll give you about 30 seconds and see if you could figure it out, how we might get from hand to task. And by the way, this is a great hook for introducing a new unit, choosing 2 words in the unit and turning it into a word ladder, and the students have a lot of fun doing it. But I'll give you 30 seconds. I'm not sure if you chat me if I'll be able to see it or not, but you could chat yourself and see if you're able to get from hand to task. And you can also think about what's a really common phrase that we say in the classroom that has the word hand in it, because that's what this is about. A really quick engagement tool. Okay, so if you got it, here's one way. There's a few ways of doing it, but one of them is we go from hand to band to bank to tank to sink, right? Now, and I am getting chat, so I guess you got it. We want to go from hand to task. What's a common phrase that we say a lot of times in our classroom that has the word hand in it? Think for a second. Whether you're teaching, kindergarten or high school, raise your hand, right? Now, when we say raise your hand, how many students raise their hand? Now, it could be 10% of class, it could be 50% of the class, and it could even be 95% of classes raising their hand, and you really have everybody ready to answer the question. But how many students do you actually get to choose on? Usually 1, maybe 2. Maybe you'll turn it into, a discussion where students are bouncing off of each other. But sometimes there's only 1 student engaged. And a really easy way to engage all the students is, when possible and when it makes sense, to replace hand with a task. So instead of raise your hand where 1 student is involved, replace it with a task where everybody's involved and where you're still able to see if they got it. So show me with your fingers. This is really, if you're reviewing a multiple choice worksheet, show me with your fingers. Did you choose 1, 2, 3, or 4? Giving different statements, and they stand up and sit down if they think it's true or if it's false. Turn to your partner, share the answer with your partner. For younger students, having them write the answer in the ear, whether it's, letters or math or numbers, but that's something that takes the answer, instead of just 1 student answering, you're really able to engage as many students as possible and potentially 100% of the classroom. So my second tip is just try to think of replace hand raising with task assignments, with things that the entire class could do, with a task that could have 100% engagement. Okay, the third one actually, you'll notice this now after you hear me say, you'll notice it when you're reading magazines and when you're reading appeals, when you're listening to ads. There's one word that's in common between all of these. There's one word that's on all of these ads that's a really powerful word in the classroom. You want to type it in the chat box? What's that one word or the root of the word that is in, it's in all of these ads and it's in almost every ad. Yes, I see a lot of people typing it. You. Using the word you in the classroom. Again, seeing when you can switch from I and instead switching it to you. For example, instead of, I have an exciting math activity for you today, or I have an exciting Navi activity for you today, switching that to, you get to participate in an exciting math activity today. Switching from, here's what you're going to do for me for this project, switching the me to you. Here's what you're going to do so you have a great project, and giving them the guidelines. Again, just keeping in mind that I is the focus on the teacher. It's a teacher-centered classroom. And to make it a student-centered classroom, just switching that I to you is so, so, so powerful. And now that I told it to you, you're going to notice it in all the ads that you're reading. And you'll see that when you do it with, and again, no matter what age your students are, I mean, these ads are written for adults from the youngest to the oldest, just switching I to you changes it from a from a teacher-centered classroom to really a student-centered classroom where the students are owning their work and their learning. Okay, the fourth one has to do with our world. And as you see over here, we have a lot of different emojis, very familiar emojis that we all have on our phones. And take a minute and see if you're able to, there's a connection between all of these emojis that also have to do with the world. Okay, there's a connection between all of these emojis, the food, the clock, the music. Is there anything that is coming to mind that's a connection between all of these emojis? So think back to, if you teach 11th grade, think back to when you were in 11th grade. If you teach 3rd grade, think back to when you were in 3rd grade. Now, for some of you, it might be 2 years ago, it might be 4 years ago. For some of you, it might be 30, 40 years ago, right? But think back to when you were a student in the age that you are currently teaching. And see if you can remember what the world was like then, what your class was like then, right? And even for those of you, even for the teacher who this is their first year teacher, and there aren't that many years from when you were in 12th grade yourself and now you're a 12th grade teacher, even from then to now, the world has changed so much. All of these things have changed. The way we prepare food and the way we get food has changed, right? The way we eat, the way we get deliveries. I mean, think back when you were a student, there was no Amazon Prime. Think about all your teachers who really went shopping in the store and, didn't just get things delivered to their door. The way we check time, the way we travel, laundry, even manicures. Now there's robots that can give you, manicures. The way we listen to music, the way we send things to others, the way we take pictures, everything has changed in the world, right? The world is changing so much. And as much as it changed in the last, however many years it was that you were a student in your grade, as much as it changed in the last 4 years, or as much as it changed in the last 30 years, in the next 30 years, it's going to change even more. With the rise of everything, all the technology and AI going on in the world is going to change a lot. So you might even have that when you were a student, there was a subject that you learned which is not taught anymore, right? We don't have typewriting anymore. There's debate about if schools should be teaching script or not. So much of the world is changing and the curriculum is changing. And what is important to think about in this changing world? What skills can we give our students that will prepare them for this future that we don't know, that we don't know what it looks like? So it's interesting because actually about 20 years ago, which was quite a while ago, the NEA, the National Education Association, came together and came up with 4 C's, which is really which are 4 learning skills to think about in your classroom: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, which Brett, I know you also touched on. These 4 skills, no matter how much the world changes, and no matter how much, the food changes and the shipping and the pictures and everything, no matter how much everything changes, these 4 skills are so important and will forever remain so important. The way students communicate with each other, the way they work together, the way they collaborate with each other, critical thinking and creativity, all of these things are human skills that are so, so, so important. And sometimes when we think about group work, we might think about, it's so much harder to do things as a group. It takes so much longer when I give my students, group work. It's so much easier if I just spoon feed it to them. It's so much harder when the students have to create something, right? But really, really, we're giving them such a gift by us modeling these 4 things, and by us giving them, and by giving them the tools and the opportunity to develop and sharpen their communication, their collaboration, their critical thinking, and their creativity. And that brings me to the last tip, which kind of also comes together with what we just spoke about, the 4 C's that are, a tool that are forever helpful. So we spoke about 4 tips so far. The first one, get to know each other, right? Students, teachers, students to students, everyone getting to know each other. 2, replace hand with task, trying to replace having students raise their hand with giving a task that, gives the opportunity for 100% engagement. 3, one word, thinking about that one word in the classroom, bringing in the word you, switching I for you and really making it a student-centric classroom. And 4, our world, what skills are important in our world, and thinking about the 4 C's that we have in the world. Now, these spell the word grow. My nickname is Ever Growing Educator, because the truth is that the same skills that we want to give our students with the 4 C's, we also want to show them and model a growth mindset. We want to show them that every day we're a better teacher than the day before, that every day we try harder than yesterday. And that's what we could do. We come to PD and we come to webinars, and the fact that you took an hour on a weeknight to come to a webinar is amazing. That shows you want to grow, you want to learn, you want to get tools. But we want to make sure that it doesn't just stay in the inspiration phase, and that it actually goes into the practical phase, right? So actually the second Friday in January is called Quitters Friday, because that is when a majority of people quit their New Year's resolution. So we don't want that. We don't want that by the second Friday in school. All of these ideas that we had in our minds are, a Quitters Friday. We want to take them and want to implement them. So I highly recommend for you, whether you use the chat box or you use a Post-it note, take a minute today to reflect on what each of us share, and take a minute to write down, what will I actually do to implement this, to be a better teacher tomorrow when I go into my classroom, next week when I go into my classroom? What will I do that this doesn't just stay on the webinar, but that what happened on the webinar affects our classroom, makes a change in our classroom? Because when we show our students our growth mindset, and when we model to them how we grow, again, that is one of the best gifts we could give them, that they want to grow and that they want to get better each day. So here's to, l'chaim, to a year of growth for all of us, for us and for our students.
Thank you so much, Mushki. And now we're going to turn it to Yonina.
Oh my gosh, I feel so much pressure now. I have to follow 2 awesome presentations. Okay. I hope get your brains ready. We have a little bit more for you. Okay, thank you so much, Brett and Mushki. And I have a few things that I'll kind of jump off of your points also. All right, so I mentor teachers and the new teachers. I mentor the veteran teachers. And yeah, we talk about classroom management, and that's very important. But when it comes to talking to parents, all of a sudden there's like this, like, wait, the parents are calling me the teacher, and I have to call this parent. It's just like this piece of education that so many teachers have told me, if I didn't have to do any of that, I really would love being a teacher. I really wish the parent piece didn't exist. Well, that's probably not going to happen. So let's give you some really practical things you can do to just help your relationship with the parents and help calm your nerves when you have to deal with that piece. So is there a magic answer? Yes, there is. I think I have the magic answer for you. When we think about parents in our classroom and how we're going to communicate with them, these are the 2 words. You ready? Observable behaviors. Now, Mushki, we had some nice chat going on the chat box. That was pretty cute. So what do you think the word observable means? Observable, quick, off the first talk, go, observable. What does that mean? Let's see what we have here. Observable. Oh, come on, don't be shy. Mushki, you had people, okay, what you see in the classroom. Okay, ooh, I like that, objective, not subjective. You can see, oh yeah, here we go, measurable. Love it. Yes, something you can see. So oftentimes when we have to call a parent, and what are we doing? We have to talk about the child. And naturally, we have our own opinions and versions of what's going on, and it's not even always on purpose. And that sometimes creates some tension because then the other person might feel a little bit defensive. And so we think about observable behaviors. Before we make that phone call, before we send that email, we say, 1 second. I know what I think about this, but what's the observable behavior? So I can say to myself, this kid is so lazy and disorganized. I mean, it's such a mess. Or we can say, what's the observable behavior? If someone else walked into the room and someone else walked in, what would we all see? She needed 6 reminders to take out her notebooks. I timed it. It took 10 minutes for her to find the piece of paper. Okay. And so when we communicate with parents and we use observable behaviors, it kind of makes it easier to just cut to the chase and solve the issue. It takes out the emotions and the feelings, and no one's getting defensive. And it's like, look, hey, it's taking her 10 minutes to find her notebook. Man, we got to fix that. Just cuts right to the chase. And when we use that observable behavior as our motto and we follow that through, it can also solve some other things. I'm looking back in the chat box here just to see what other people, what I'm noticing, right, without judgment. And it seems so obvious to us, like I didn't teach you anything new just now, but I think as people, that's right away what we do. And we have trouble sometimes giving that over to parents. So we just say, what would someone see if they walked into this room? So, all these professional developments, when they're talking about communicating with parents, it's always like we need to form a partnership and we need to get together. And that's all very true, but it's very hard to form a partnership with someone you don't really know and maybe you speak to, a few times. It's very difficult. So when we remember that this is the same child spending a bunch of hours in school, and by the way, they also spend a bunch of hours at home. When we have to communicate that observable behavior, instead of couching it as a statement, we can couch it as a question to the parent. So let's use our example of our student who's a little disorganized, but we're just going to say it takes 10 minutes to get the notebook. And we call the parent and we say, I'm noticing that at school, it takes 10 minutes to take out the notebook. How does that play out at home? When you need to get things ready and you're going places, what happens at home? So right away, again, we don't feel defensive, and it kind of brings the parent in because you're asking a question. You really would like to know their opinion. And we all know that when someone asks our opinion, it means that we matter. It means that you're thinking about me and you want to know what I have to say. It helps both the parent and the teacher see the bigger picture. It creates teamwork. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on what I'm seeing at school. Your child. What do you think? What do you think I can do? Now, even if the parent says to you, what? We know, someone just said it's in the chat box. This never happens at home. But again, think of the language. If I come in and say, this always happens and it is such a problem, right? Versus this is happening at school. What do you think? Right? You can deny the behavior doesn't happen at home. Okay, but it's happening in school. So help me out. What do you think we can do? Because the goal is to bring them on board. And that's what you're doing by using that language. Which kind of brings me to the next thing that teachers, I wonder if I'll even get it in the chat box. Because our world is changing, as Mushki said, right? The way we communicate is very different. And a lot of the teachers that I mentor now, most of the communication that they're used to doing is through email, right? It's a lot simpler, it's a lot easier. I don't think, back when I was little, my parents got phone calls, my parents made phone calls. We don't really do that now. And emails become more common. And teachers will say to me, okay, I'm going to tell the parent this, this, and that. And they're describing this whole email that they're going to write. And so I say, listen, the world is changing, as Mushki said, but listen, sometimes you got to call. Oh, someone just wrote through WhatsApp. Yeah, there's all this technology. And forget teaching for a second. I mean, you can read all these studies. You know it. When you're emailing, when you're WhatsApping, you're taking out the tone of voice that the two of you have. So you don't understand what's going on. And you're communicating about a child. And you're communicating about something perhaps that needs to be fixed. And so I say to teachers, I know it's hard, but sometimes you got to call. So when are emails good? What do you think? Let's get this chat box going again. When do you think an email is good? Newsletter, nice. Reminders, good. Yeah, can't forget those nachas notes when you want to give over something positive. That's right. And let's just remember that. And it's hard. I know it's hard as educators. We come home and we're exhausted and our days are so long. And the last thing we want to do really is like go sit with that parent who you know maybe isn't the easiest parent to talk to. Okay, so I agree with what everyone's saying here. Quick check-ins, compliments. Although I will add that a phone call compliment is awesome, right? To not get it as an email and hear someone say, here's what your child did today. By the way, observable behaviors, not just for things that aren't so great, but things that are really great. Okay, instead of me saying your child is great, tell them, give the observable behavior. Sometimes you gotta schedule the phone call so that you can relay the observable behavior the right way. Prepare, get your phone call. You can document afterwards what happened, but remember that it matters. Sometimes the phone call really matters. I think I'm up to 3, 2 more for you. And we're gonna a little bit switch gears. As Dr. Namdar said before, I am the author of a book called A Kid's Book About Perseverance. It's a really awesome book. I'm not biased. And I want to talk for a second about how we can bring parents in on this idea of perseverance. A kid's book about perseverance. I'm seeing in the chat box. Maybe we'll write it in over there. And in short, because I could give a whole nother workshop on this, kids, I mean, it's crazy. They're giving up like there's no tomorrow. Their perseverance skills are really weak. And it is our job as educators and parents to really help them improve with this. And we got to get our parents on board, okay? So I'm going to give you some language that you can use in the classroom and you can tell your parents that they can use at home. Quite simply, kids want us to solve everything for them. That's what they want. They have a problem, please fix it. Okay, I had a student last year, this is 5th grade. She walked into the classroom and her chair that is always by her desk, her table wasn't there. It was pushed over there. And she came to me and said, I don't have a chair. I can't find it. It was like literally just like a few feet over. Okay. And here's the line that I use. Please, please use it. What have you tried so far to help yourself before I help you? What have you done? And I said that to her. Oh, man, you're missing your chair. That stinks. So like, what did you do so far? And she was like, nothing. And I said, okay, do something. Tell me what you've done so far. Needless to say, she just looked and she was like, oh, it's right there. And I'm like, yeah. So please, again, what have you tried so far to help you? And communicate that language to parents so that they can use it at home too. It's hard. We're in a rush and it's just easier to get things done, but we got to build these skills. And lastly, I'm up to number 5. When talking about perseverance and bringing your parents on board, we ask parents, when your child comes to you with some kind of issue that they want you to solve, stop for a second and think how you, as Mushki said, we're always modeling, how do you parents, how do you confront challenges? What are the things that you do? And when you do them, do you point them out to your kids? Do they know about the really crazy, nerve-wracking presentation you did at work and how you got through it? Do you talk about that stuff? I don't know, but they need to hear more of it. And when they come for help, we need to guide them to do those things that you do instead of right away jumping to give them the answers and to spoon feed to them. We really need to see our children improve in this area. So as the presenters said before, it's as educators, it's hard, but we have so many ways that we can grow ourselves, taking care of ourselves, how we can model for our students. And it's a lot. I feel like everything just happened out was a lot. Hopefully you came away with a few just nuggets that you can try. And these were practical tips. And it's really, I was so honored to be with these other presenters and to work with OHEL. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Yanina. Hey, the Q&A box is starting to fill up. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer them. But for our first question, I'm going to ask this question to Brett. as a dean and a learning specialist, I'm sure that you have a lot of difficult conversations with parents, some of which Janina may have touched on. Can you share another tip that you have for having those difficult conversations with parents?
Absolutely. So again, Yonina had mentioned something really important, which is observable behavior. I want to reiterate that because when you stick to what you know and it's fact rather than what your emotions are, it changes the landscape of it. There are a few things I would say in regards to that question. The first is I really try at the beginning of the year to find a way to connect with families on a positive note, whether they've done something good or whether I'm just asking them to share what their experiences have been previously. Because if you can start the year letting them know that you A, care, and B, want to hear what they have to say, the tension comes down. They know they have someone in their corner. And when those other conversations do come up, it's not the only time I hear from you is negative. So that's really important. I will also say, do your research. Okay. Oftentimes we know when a difficult conversation is coming. Okay. I had someone last week had a really rough year last year and spoke to someone else in our school and said, none of the teachers followed through. My kid had a horrible year and the ball was dropped. Well, I made sure that I took that information. I made sure I understood the situation. And today was the first day of school. Doesn't matter. I made a phone call to that family. I said, I had your child today for the first time. I just wanted to let you know, I'm aware that things didn't go so smoothly last year. I get that that was frustrating for you. I would be frustrated too. I can empathize with that. This is what I'm going to do to make sure that the ball isn't dropped, we are in communication, and that you partner with me. That is huge. And so I know I saw in the comments somebody said, what happens when the parent doesn't want to hear what you have to say? Find that common ground. That common ground is really easy. You care about your child, I care about your child. How we get there, that may differ, and we can work on that. But if you can find that common ground, it's tremendously different because they understand that you're supporting their kid and you want what's best for them. And then the one other piece I'll answer on that is there's a story where a group of people came and they said, we don't think you should fish tuna anymore. They're becoming extinct and you shouldn't do it. And they go to this minister and they tell him it's a horrible thing. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. Why would I stop? It's such a big industry. And they spent all this time planning out, this is what they wanted to do. And this is the answer they got. They wasted so much time. And so this person says, would you mind if I spoke to the minister? And he says, go ahead, sure, show us. And he goes to the minister and he said, so I understand that you don't want to stop fishing for tuna. What's your reason? And he says, well, I have 2 million people that live in my country that are dependent on this. And so he says, well, I'm really concerned because in 3 years, you may have 2 million people that don't have a job. And I want to make sure that we're able to look out for them. What do you think we can do to help your people? The exact same message was given, but the framing of why is it important to the parent or why is it important to the student in this case has changed. And that's the biggest thing. Make sure you find that common ground.
Thank you. Okay, the questions are starting to roll in. Do you have tips on students fighting? Thank you for asking that question. Mushki or Yonina, would any of you like to answer that question? Any tips on students fighting? Yeah.
Okay, so one second, I just also want to add to what the previous question, if that's okay, and
Sure,
then I'll
sure.
come to this one, but I just wanted to add 2 things. So in regards to communication with parents, communicating with the parents before school or, in the beginning of the school year, I found that even asking the same questions that I'm asking the students, asking them to the parents also works. But a tip for that is that I found helpful is that a lot of times we might think in our head, okay, I reached out to all the parents, I'm in touch with all the parents, but what ends up happening is that sometimes we end up being in touch with the parents who need to be contacted the most, or the ones that we have many, many nachas calls, and that middle, sometimes gets forgotten about. So a quick tip for that is to print out a class list, to print out a few copies of the class list. And each time you're in communication with a parent about something positive, to highlight the child's name and to make sure that the entire class is highlighted and then taking it off, and then, go to the second time that you're, reaching out positive to each parent. But it's just like when you have that list that you're either physically highlighting or on a Google sheet, deleting a parent, bolding a parent, whatever it is. But keeping the list and marking it down will make sure that you're actually in touch with every parent, as opposed to, maybe the ones who are most in touch or the ones who you might, naturally be most in touch with. So I did just want to add that to the previous question. Okay. Do you have any tips on students fighting? Okay. So it's a hard one because it's so dependent on so many factors: age of the students, why it's happening, who it's happening with, etc. But one general thing that I like to keep in mind with all of these issues, so to speak, is what can we do proactively to prevent it? So what can we do proactively to create a culture in the classroom where we're kind with one another? What can we do proactively to create, a classroom culture where we're speaking kindly, acting kindly, and, we don't use such language in our classroom, is a lot easier than once the students are in that fighting mode trying to deal with it, right? So again, spending a lot of time in the beginning of the year with giving a chance for the students to get to know each other. There's different activities for the students to do, they're going to look different in first grade and in 12th grade, but really teaching the students how to work together, how to speak to each other, how to learn with one another. I remember when COVID came and we were all put on Zoom school, right? And then I assigned group work to my students, and I go into my 6th grade classroom and I go into the first Zoom room, and what do I see? 2 black screens, right? The students do not know how to speak to each other. And that was when I realized, okay, I have to teach them, when you go into the breakout room, tell the other student, would you like to go first or should I go first? And I really had to model to them what Zoom school looks like. But the truth is that we also have to model in-person school. We also have to model what kind language looks like, and what the norms are in the classroom and the accepted behaviors. We have to model it and point it out when we notice it properly, So that's just the idea of trying to be proactive about it, and as opposed to reactive with all of these type of issues that come up, will always be helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. We have a number of questions coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine some of the questions that we've received, just so that we get to answer all your questions. So somebody wrote in, I was wondering how you balance a full class of students with different learning capabilities, as well as students who like to be goofy and want the attention on them. So we've got, in each of our classrooms, we've got a range of different learning capabilities, and we've also got all kinds of behavioral challenges or students who want the attention. How do you ensure that both the students who are faster learners and those who take longer to understand feel that the classroom is a place that is conducive to the kind of learning that they need? That's a great question.
I mean, Brett and Mushka, you can jump in here with me. That is a huge question that I think would probably need to be broken down into just so many different pieces. So I'll talk a little bit about the goofy, the kids who constantly want attention, and kind of like what Mushki was saying about the fighting. It's hard for us to answer, give you like the magic answers to that, because it depends how old and what's happening and what are the observable behaviors. So for something offhand, goofy, well, why are they looking for attention? I find usually that's a big social red flag. Do they have friends? Is this the way that they're trying to make new friends? Start by being the observer. What's going on at recess? Who are they sitting with at lunch? Who do they, you can even ask, who do you play with on the weekends? Again, there could be so many different answers to why this is happening, but usually I find that is a really good place to start. Is this a child who needs attention? And so they're trying to get some attention. I would start there.
Just chiming in off of that, I think in terms of the large number of different learning profiles that you're going to find, there's good education, and that looks pretty similar across the board. You want to differentiate your instruction, but if you can do that planning that I was talking about ahead of time, scaffold the lesson so that you're properly thinking about the different type of learners and say, okay, I need to have a rubric. How can I use that rubric how can that rubric make sense to students? And you may want to run that rubric by a few other people. We're teachers and we think we're in like our little box, but you have other teachers in your building. Check in. Does this rubric make sense? Would you add this or that? Would you take anything out? Get that information and understand where it makes sense and where it's confusing, and use as clear and concise language as possible. The shorter the language, the easier it is for those kids who it may be a little bit more difficult for. And the more you break up those steps, the easier it's going to be for them to be able to take those things in. And as long as you have multiple steps, you can still hold to a high standard. I'm very much a believer that kids can get to that standard of you can go from here to here. The process of what you're doing and how you move through that may look a little bit different. The amount of support, you may go spend more time when they're working independently, checking in with those students first. And when I start my classes, I always tell the kids, if you know you need something from me today, I'm going to check in with all of you. But let me know if you want to be a high radar person today. And for the most part, I think they're willing to acknowledge that. And once you get that opened up, the kids will see this is part of the norm. And you're going to be able to move your time around and balance it so that they can all have a similar standard, but at the same time, change up how you go about approaching those kids. I think that makes a big difference.
Thank you. Okay, I see we have questions in the chat as well. So any questions that you have, please put them in the Q&A box, and our time is coming to a close. So we have time for just one more question, just quickly. I teach 9th grade. The students are all trying to get to know one another. Is there a way to encourage, and really this question is not just a 9th grade question, it's an all grades question. How do we encourage student interaction out of school hours without having the kids pair up and having some kids left out? And even I would venture to ask the question, you know, this is out of school hours. How much is it our responsibility as teachers to really think about their social interaction outside of hours? I think we all know that, you know, whatever happens outside of the classroom bleeds into the classroom as well. But how would you, you know, in the practical realm of everything else that you're doing during the day, how would you approach really encouraging this social interaction with your students, whether they're high school kids or, you know, middle schoolers or elementary school students? Because chances are parents are also going to be reaching out to you about this. Anyone?
Brett, you want to go first? I'll jump off of you.
I was just going to give a quick example of, I think, to put it the best way I can, speed dating is really helpful. I have an advisory, and today was our first one, and I wanted them to get to know each other. We have a game where you stand on opposite sides of the room and you bounce a bouncy ball, one to the other, one back, 2 bounces back. And I let them pick who they wanted to stand opposite and work with. I knew it involved communication. I knew it involved teamwork. I knew it involved something fun. Within 2-3 minutes, they were so invested. And then I said, okay, I have them. Everybody on this side of the hallway, I want you to move down one. Whoever's at the end, move to this side. They didn't think twice about who the other person was once I moved them. And every 2 minutes I shifted them, and they got to actually communicate with and work with other students. I think if you build in natural ways for them to be able to interact with other people, the first fight over your locker's next to mine and you put your stuff near my space and I put your stuff, it comes down when you take down that tension by finding ways to allow them to interact when it's lower stakes. So that method of just shifting them a little bit and allowing them to start with someone they like and move along and switch it, it's going to go too fast for them to realize that they're interacting with someone they may not know as well, and hopefully get to know them a little better.
I'm just going to throw in here, this might actually be super controversial. I don't know if this is a good way to end, but jumping off of you, Brett, a short little story. A bunch of years ago, I had a student who brought a basketball to school to play with, and the principal told him he has to share it with everybody. And he came to me and he said, why? I brought it to school, I schlepped it, and I want to put, like, you know, so let those kids bring their own basketball. And I'm putting it out here with this question because, of course, we want everyone to get together. And I think what Mushki said is really key, that if we model that the expectation is that we're going to work here together in this classroom, then in the classroom, yeah, we're going to really work on that. And hopefully that'll bleed outside and kids will get to know each other better and they'll want to spend more time together. But I'll leave with this question is, do they have to? Do they have to have everyone always involved all the time when they're not in the classroom? Sometimes some kids have a hard time. They can respect each other in school, but it's hard for them. So I don't know, just putting it out there.
Okay, all right. I just want to thank everybody for coming here tonight and spending your last few precious days or your last few precious hours of free time, perhaps. Yes, free. I'm not sure how free it is in the lead up of back to school, but really for coming here, for being on this webinar here with us tonight. And I want to thank our incredible panelists. And I hope that, your learning has been really engaging tonight. As Mushki said, please take just one tool even from the nuggets that our awesome presenters have provided you with here tonight, and just make one commitment of one thing that you want to keep for yourself, and remind yourself of throughout the year. I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. The recording will be sent to all those who registered within the next day or so. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for all that you do. And I want to wish you an incredible start to the new year, stronger than ever before. Thank you, everyone.